Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LeanTossup College Football Podcast. We're going to be doing the ACC preview podcast, and we also have a special guest today. This is actually our first guest on the College Football Podcast. But of course, I'll introduce my co-host at Buck Metrics. How are you doing tonight?
Oof. I feel bloated, misshapen, unpopular, fat, poorly conceived, and even more poorly executed. I feel like Elon Musk. If you give me a bad haircut, I'd feel like Kim Jong-un. But I also feel like the ACC, because that's kind of the ACC that we have today, is it not?
A little bit, yeah. I'm not.
A little.
It is a little bloated. It's a bit top heavy. Couple of top teams. And then there's a lot of there's a lot of teams that are just like, why are these teams here? And I think that's a very good point. Let me introduce our co-host, our special guest today, Josh Chevalier from the CFFGuys, at CFFGuys on Twitter. How are you doing tonight?
Doing well, man. I'm excited to be on with you guys. And, I was listening to your Conference USA podcast, and it's great. So I'm just hoping I don't bring down the IQ level in this chat. But, I think we'll have a good time.
Yeah, it's all good. And as we're doing this with video now, so I see you there. You've got your Miami hat there. I guess you're going to be a little biased on this podcast, but that's okay. We all do have our biases.
Yes.
So, yes. How long have you been a Miami fan for?
Man, so I was a Florida Gator. So I grew up in Florida. So Central Florida, which is like basically Gator country. At least when I was growing up, it was USF having a team. And so I was a Gator fan until I was 6, and then my next door neighbor moved in. He was like 30, went to the University of Miami, was best friends with Craig Erickson, who's like the 1993 quarterback. And he just like hooked me into like Miami football. And so I converted. I converted at the age of 6. It was a wonderful experience back then. It was, the glory days. And then I've been suffering for the last 22 years. So here we are.
It's been rough a bit. I guess we'll talk a bit more about Miami later, but I guess that was actually the first question in our interview things. We're doing these interviews now. We did the two of them, and we're going to do them for all of our guests. So go ahead. Do you want to ask the next question, Buck?
Yeah. So outside of Miami, who's your favorite team?
Well, I got a USF Cup right here, and I used to have season tickets there when I lived there. But they're not my second favorite team because I now live in Austin, Texas. And so, University of Texas is I've had season tickets the last few years, and I'm just
pretty rough.
I'm losing credibility in Mark's eyes as I speak. So.
I'm just thinking, don't listen to anything that we said last year. I'll just keep it at that.
It was probably pretty accurate, to be honest. No, it's great, man. It's great.
We're not. I think Texas will eventually figure it out. I just don't know if they're going to do it with Steve Sarkisian.
But I will say this: he is restocking the cupboard.
Yep.
And so if he's not the guy, then he's going to leave much more talent than they've had in the last 10 years. So that'll be nice.
I can completely agree with that. Yeah.
Don't replace him with Clay Helton. You'll be in great shape.
Yeah, there we go. As long as he brings along the Texas Tech OC, Zach Kitley.
There you go.
Who was with him at Western Kentucky.
Yep.
So, all right. So, for which program do you have a rational or or basically unusual disdain?
Yeah, I hope none of them listen to this pod. Maybe they will next week, but I won't mention it. But Central Florida, UCF.
I'm with you on that.
Having lived there, having lived on Twitter, the national championship they claim. It's just this irrational, like they think they deserve a seat at the table. And I don't know, they're getting pumped, man, about getting 3-4 stars in a class. I'm like, you're in the Big 12. You should be getting 4 stars now. Come on, act like you've been there before. And they just don't. And so between me being a USF season ticket holder for a little bit and loving that squad for when they had Quentin Flowers and kind of the glory days for them, and their the irrational mindset of the UCF fan base, I'm just out on them.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. In the cesspool that is college football Twitter, they still manage to stand out somehow. I don't know how, but it's just
Yes,
I blocked by far the most UCF people of any, probably all the other schools combined. It's too much.
it's
Okay.
crazy.
Two-part question, and you can treat these together or separately. I see them as separately. What are the best logo in college football and the best helmet?
Yeah. So this is where I am going to be biased. I mean, I do love the U. And so, man, I'm going to go with that for logo, but helmet wise, and this is where, I'm not biased. I just I love the Gators helmet. I think it's clean. I think the colors go well together. I think it's classy. But the other helmet that I like is Boise State. I just love, again, there must be something about that blue and orange, color, combination that I like. But I also like Boise. I think they do a good job with their uniforms and stuff like that as well. So we'll do Boise State, Florida. And Boise State might actually be my favorite logo, to be honest. I love the new Bronco that they have on the helmet.
Not the Florida logo. Interesting.
Yeah.
Not the Gator.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all right. I mean, I grew up with Gators, man, so I have a different relationship with them. They were in my backyard. So
that is true. Yeah, I live in Canada. We don't have any Gators here, so I don't see them.
Yeah.
So who's on your college football Mount Rushmore?
Okay, so I got, a couple guys. I got Barry Sanders, man, that, just the insane season he had, rushing yards was just, my background is college fantasy football, and so that guy put up 40 points a game, which is unheard of before any of us were playing college fantasy. So he's one. Reggie Bush is another. He's just one of my favorite college players, just stuff he would do. And then Vince Young. I mean, and we'll talk about those two coming together here in a minute. But Vince Young, man, he was another. I just loved watching him play. That year was probably really the year that I dove all in with college football above the NFL. And then Michael Vick. I think just back in the day, wow. I think what he was able to do, his speed, and he was, can you imagine him in current kind of spread tempo offenses? Yeah. It's he would be unbreakable, and he was in a pro style. Use him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Michael Vick for me is definitely up there, and that's my these aren't the greatest players of all time. I'm not saying that. These are just my personal favorite players that I love to watch.
Yeah, the Michael Vick thing's a great what if because, Frank Beamer, I don't know if he was the best guy to use him, was just there's one passer just make something happen. It wasn't we're going to just make defenses suffer like Riley knows how to use Caleb Williams, for example. Yeah. That's a good one. All right. What do you love most about college football?
Yeah. So, again, my background is in college fantasy football. So I love that, one, there's so many teams, and I think what happens at the college level, there's so much creativity on offense, and I think it probably starts at the high school level, but there's teams that they're just overmatched talent-wise, so they have to figure out other ways to produce points and to score points, and I think that crisis can really be the birthplace of creativity, and I think when you have a crisis of talent, you have to figure out other ways to do it. And so the creative offenses that you find, whether it's the triple option or, Jamie Chadwell now at Liberty, what he's kind of turned his spread triple idea into, all the different iterations of the air raid, the veer and shoot. These things are they're just awesome to me. I would love to just study this all day and that'd be my day job.
And that's one of the things. One of the cool things is that a lot of the stuff from college does eventually find its way up to the pro level in some cases. Yeah. And it's tried here first. The impact that college has on the NFL is just huge, and it's and it gets even bigger almost every year. So, what's your favorite college football moment?
Yeah, so I go back to the Vince Young, Reggie Bush Rose Bowl of 2006, that national championship game. I think just watching that game and, was a 10-yard run that Vince Young had basically to win that game is probably my favorite moment of all time, just because of I wasn't even in Texas at the time, really had no tie to Austin, barely knew where it was on a map. And, but man, Vince Young, he was just incredible to watch, and that game was just a culmination of two great players.
As a USC guy, that's not my answer, but we'll just move on. Um, what
I
college
get it.
game
I
did
get
you?
it.
Thank you. Which college game did you want to most experience?
Yeah, I think for me, like any of the rivalries would be great, right? Like I've been to Miami, Florida State game. That was awesome. I've been to OU, UT. But the one, and this is a little bit personal to me because my mom is a big Ohio State fan, but I think experiencing like Ohio State, Michigan would be a lot of fun, preferably in Columbus, but I would do either one. I mean, just to hopefully one day I'll have enough money to be able to just go experience some of these big games and just take it in as a neutral fan, but just, taking in the pure bliss of college football.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who do you consider to be the best college football team that you've seen? Either you could be either in person or on TV. I think I know the answer to this one, but
Yeah, I think I do too. For me, again, biased, but 2001 Miami, like it was just a fun team. And they had like 20 first round picks on that team. Frank
Yep.
Gore was like the third string running back, and he
It
was
was nuts.
pre
Yeah.
injury. He was the best running back I've ever seen before he tore his ACL twice, and still went on to have a great career. But so that team for sure. I did see the 2002 Miami Hurricanes in person in Syracuse. Drove up to that game and watched it in the Carrier Dome up there, which is a great experience. Um, Watching a game in like a cesspool, it's like basically sitting in a sauna because it's in a dome up there and it's crazy. But but yeah, 2001 Miami would be my biased answer for sure.
That was mine too, so I could clear your bias on that. Um,
Okay, good.
what movie have you seen the most times?
Yeah, so man, it's not a well-known movie, but it's called Warrior. It's with Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton and Nick Nolte, and it's basically an MMA movie. Um, but it's kind of like presented that way, but it's really this movie about reconciliation between like two brothers and their dad, that they're estranged from each other, and it's basically a modern retelling of Cain and Abel, and just really good storytelling, but
that's
also
nice. That's good.
has that the fighting aspect of it too, which is fun.
Yeah. And then what's your non-political message to make the world a better place?
Oh man, I can't believe I can't put politics on here. Just kidding. Uh, I'm about the most apolitical person you'll meet. So, yeah. So for me, Mr. Rogers, back in the day, he had a quote, and he said, "Everyone longs to be loved, and the greatest thing that we can do is to let people know that they're loved and capable of loving." And so, I think for me, honestly, man, like my goal with every interaction is to leave people feeling like they have experienced unconditional love and acceptance. And so I think if I can do that, help people be fully known and fully accepted just as they are, and therefore they experience love, like that'd be pretty dope. So that's my goal. I'm trying to get better at that every day. I fail. I got 4 kids, so I fail at that every day. But man, it's a goal, and we'll see. It helps me be a better person for sure.
Oh, that's I don't even know how to go to that to like ripping on Miami. I'm kidding. Um,
That's okay. Unconditional
before we
love and
dig into
acceptance, man.
okay, before we dig into the teams, just a quick overview of the ACC. Just a couple of points to think about. So, you know, the conference, like I said at the beginning, is just kind of misshapen, which is interesting. It's kind of two conferences in one, but whatever. It's bound together more, more than a love for football by basically a horrible grant of media rights that's going to dominate realignment talk until what
Yep.
2036 or whenever that expires. Um,
Mm-hmm.
At which
the
point the conference
ACC,
blows up like a giant pinata.
yes,
Yep.
and the
Oh,
pieces of candy go spilling out to the Big Ten and the SEC and what's left of the Big 12 and Pac-12, Pac-10.
yep.
Um, the ACC is also the home of one Beano Cook. Let me share my screen here real quick so people know. There'd be a lot of people since not everybody's as old as I am. There is the handsome Beano Cook. Is he popping up there? There we are. Beano Cook was the sports information director for the University of Pittsburgh. A huge college football fan. He had a really distinct voice. He loved college football. When he was on ESPN, he was just my guy to watch because he got excited and he had funny little folksy sayings. So two stories about Beano Cook, well, since we're in the ACC territory. First, about in the late 80s, when there was some chatter about Penn State, who was independent at the time, going to the Big Ten, he wanted to make a point about how impossible it would be. So he said, in his voice, he said, Penn State will go to the Big Ten after the Berlin Wall falls. And actually, they both happened. It was an amazing prediction. He was right, but for the wrong reasons. Second Beano Cook story. Get a good look at the guy, because this is just fascinating. So when he was a sports information director at Pitt, I think it was like in the 50s, maybe the early 60s, he got a phone call from a lady who was clearly had been overserved at some point. So she says, I need the name of every Pittsburgh football player in alphabetical order. He says, I'm sorry? She said, yeah, I need the name of every football player in alphabetical order. He said, well, can I ask why? She said, I'm a big Pitt fan, and I'm going to have sex with every team member in alphabetical order. He says, yep, hold on. Let me grab my roster. Okay. First name, Cook, comma, Beano. So my guy was just setting himself up. So Beano Cook, God bless you. Rest in peace. He was just an absolute gem. Just one of the reasons that I love college football. All right, let's take Beano off here.
What a story. I love it.
I try to keep that one in my back pocket to use personally, but I just haven't had the opportunity yet.
One day when the Buck Metrics get huge.
The ACC is also home of our Narduzzi Awards. Just want to mention that every week during the regular season, we'll give out Narduzzi Awards for people who do really baffling, surprisingly, just questionably whatever coaching moves. And so part of the ACC lore here. And then finally, back to more serious stuff. I don't know if you all are aware of this. This year, the ACC finally abandons the worst division structure in all of college football. I mean, worse than the leaders and legends. That was just the worst. I'm so glad that they're done. Just the top two teams play just like, the big boys do, except for the SEC. So, all right. For those who didn't listen to the Conference USA episode, structure is I've got a most fascinating team here I'm going to dig into. Then we're just going to, each of us going to kind of make a case for or against some teams. Then we're going to classify them as elevator up, elevator down for big steps up or down from last year, stairs up, stairs down for smaller steps versus the prior year, or stuck in the lobby. And so my most fascinating team, and buckle up, guys, this might be a while. I'll get my rant done, and then I'll throw it to the guest for his opinions, especially since he's a Miami guy. My most fascinating team is Miami. They went 5-7 last year in their first season under Mario Cristobal. On offense, I had their offensive power rating as a negative 5.5. In the first year under Mario, Tyler Van Dyke's apex, that is my quarterback rating, where 100 is average for all of FBS, went from a 143 in 2021 to a 95 in 2022. Not good. Where have I seen this before? Well, in 2017, Justin Herbert at Oregon had an apex of 153. His first season under Mario had an apex of 109. So I've seen something here before. Their GGAB. And if you didn't, again, hear the Conference USA pod, GGAB is ground game against Boston College. It's basically a measure of your rushing productivity as related to the worst rushing team last year, Boston College. They rated 112th in GGAB in all of FBS. Brutal.
Actually, quick question about that.
Yeah.
Does that mean they're better than Boston College or worse than Boston College?
Boston College is the baseline.
So Boston College is 122. Yeah. So they're like 8. Okay, there we go.
Boston College is the worst. 112th in FBS, which is tough. They actually, I guess, Josh, just to throw it to you real quick, I think their O-line was experienced last year, right? It wasn't like they had a bunch of new guys in the O-line. Is that correct?
Yeah, they did have quite a few injuries throughout the year, including Zion Nelson, who was supposed to be their left tackle. But, yeah, and they did struggle to run the ball the year before. They weren't great, but they were experienced.
Yeah. So, this goes back to one of my keys for first-year head coaches. I always look for a first-year head coach. Did he take care of his side of the ball? And we all know Mario is an offensive line coach, so I'm just concerned that we had such a horrible, performance by the offensive line in his first year. And my metrics just show among the lowest improvement in experience metrics in all of FBS for Miami this year. So it's, if they're better, it's going to be beyond projections. Their Ryan, which is my receiving yards above noob, basically a measure of your passing game against the lowest level receiver. They were below average last year. They were below average in what they retained from last year. I don't know if they lost anybody to the portal, but I know that between the portal and just graduation or exhausting eligibility, they lost quite a bit. And now they're in their third offensive coordinator in 3 seasons after the reigning Broyles Award winner was fired. So not really excited about the offense. On defense, I had a negative 2.2. They were 10th in the ACC, but not horrible. They had the worst defensive apex in the ACC. I'm kind of curious, just real quick, Josh, do your eyes kind of line up with what my numbers say in terms of the pass defense was a problem, or basically does the Middle Tennessee game just skew everything?
Well, I mean, I think you saw the Middle Tennessee State game, and I think that's I think it's a microcosm of the season in many ways. It's like, yeah, I mean, we can talk about it in a little bit, but I wonder if the coaches just gave up on their personnel.
Fair.
As both offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. But I don't understand what Kevin Steele was doing. I mean, this guy clearly is experienced, and he just didn't even have a game plan for Middle Tennessee. Like, how does that happen?
I don't know. I watched more of that game than probably the average bear for sure. It was just amazing game to watch. Different experience for you, I'm sure, but the defense took a big step back from 2022. Mm-hmm. They lost almost 5 rating points in so nice to know that you concur with that.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm showing like below average experience in returning starts, but high career starts coming back. So did they bring a lot of guys in through the portal just to fill in spots on defense? Is kind of what I infer from those numbers.
Yeah, they brought in quite a few. So they brought in Francisco Malgoa from Washington State. Yeah. And they got a bunch of like DBs coming in. They've tried to turn over that roster as much as they could. They did not like what was given before them, but we'll see. If not all experience is good experience, so we'll see.
Yep.
Okay. I'll just jump in there quickly about that. Yeah. So what do you feel about what you just said? You said that the people, like, after obviously transition from Manny Diaz, you said that the incoming coaches didn't like what they had before. Do you agree with that assessment or not? Like, because and this is the thing, because like before, obviously Miami fans were definitely divided about keeping Manny Diaz versus getting rid of him, and I'd love to know what your opinion of it was then, and then what your opinion of it would be now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, definitely I was in favor of getting rid of him. I mean, the thing with Manny, he was a good salesman in a lot of ways, right? He's a great TV personality. He's a good defensive coordinator when that's his role. He's not a good CEO or not a good head coach. And so I think the problem with Manny is he took too many shots on like 3 stars that just didn't pan out. And so one of the things that you'll see personally, what I think with Mario Cristobal, I mean, you can question his game management, his coaching, his selection of coordinators, whatever, but the guy knows how to assess talent and how to recruit. So it's similar to what we talked about with Steve Sarkisian before. It's like, I don't know if Mario is the long-term guy, but I know that he's going to leave that cupboard quite full. And what he goes after body types. He goes after the body types that he learned to assess and to acquire at the University of Alabama. And so that's what they didn't like is that they had a middle linebacker that's like 5'11" and he's 225 and he's slow. It's like, you can't have all of that. You can't be 5'11", you can be undersized and slow. Like, you got to be either big or whatever. And so what Mario's come in his vision is like, I want big guys, and I want big linemen, and I want big linebackers. I want them to be really fast. I want high athleticism, right? That's like a no duh, right? But he wants SEC talent that he can put in the ACC, and that's what he's trying to acquire, and I think he's doing that so far. But it's going to take time for him to be able to turn over this roster in a way that is good, and then we'll see if the coordinator hires that he's making are actually good as well. So.
That actually, I heard a theory real quick about Kevin Steele just saying, this guy's been coaching just such high level talent that maybe he just like, kind of your point is like, what am I doing with this? These aren't the kind of guys that I'm used to coaching. Just what am I doing at this stage of my life? I'm not a builder upper. I'm like an elite finisher, I guess. So that might just be as simple as that, but that's what happened on defense.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. And Josh Gaddis was just a bad fit. And this is where Cristobal, I hope that he's learned from his mistakes in year one. And you just never know, because I don't know if he ever did it at Oregon. Now he won, he went to the Rose Bowl and a couple conference championship games, and so it worked for him. But he tried to fit square pegs into round holes. Josh Gaddis runs a certain offense.
Mm-hmm.
And that offense requires some complexity to it, and it requires you to be able to read a defense. Do you know what our boy Tyler Van Dyke cannot do? He cannot read a defense. Rhett Lashley, right? Like he's an air raid offense, essentially, where there's one or two options. And when you can just let that ball go and rip it, like Tyler Van Dyke is very good. And Shannon Dawson, that's part of bringing him in, is to simplify the offense. They're just trying to build two things they're trying to do with the Shannon Dawson hire. They're trying to get Tyler Van Dyke back to where he was, build an offense around his talent and around his ability, which is, hey, let me have one or two concepts I got to read and then let it go. And then two, they're trying to build an offense that will score points in order to acquire talent. And I think Mario Cristobal thinks in like 1 year windows with some of his hires. And I think with Shannon Dawson, I'm not saying that he's not going to be there long term, but usually if you do well at Miami as a coordinator, you're not there very long. It's just the way that it goes. But I think they're trying to go after a few wide receivers in South Florida that are 5 stars. Jeremiah Smith, who's just an elite talent, and JoJo Trader, and they just want to air it out and score points. And we'll see if Shannon Dawson. I'm skeptical at Shannon Dawson, but if he can do it, then I think that'll have worked. But we'll see. We'll see. Who knows what Mario's thinking?
Well, to your point, I kind of look at it this way. He's a great recruiter, including the diagnosis of talent, both players and coaches. He made a brilliant hire in Guidry from Marshall.
Absolutely.
Marshall I had as like a top 10 defense across. I mean, that's adjusted for quality of opponent last year. That defense was awesome. I mean, this isn't like Clay Helton just asking, who do I hire? I don't know. I mean, he knows what to do. It's a little frustrating to see that, sometimes he won't let them do the best thing that they do. What you say about Shannon Dawson, maybe he got religion. And the other thing kind of along those lines is what you described was exactly what Harbaugh was at Michigan. And especially when he hired Don Brown, because Don Brown was a bright, shiny object that was really cool. And it's kind of weird to say this, but Michigan's defense got a lot better as soon as Don Brown left. And it's not like a Don Brown is a bad defensive coordinator. It's just like wrong fit. And really, I hadn't heard of any of these guys that he brought in since, but they've been great at Michigan. Yep. So, I don't know, I'm 53 and I still screw up all the time and I learn. So not too late for him to learn his lesson, I guess. The other thing is just, he's a Kane, so there's not going to be a quick hook here. They're in for a ton of money. He makes $9 million a year. We don't know about the guarantee. Yep. They paid another $8 million to buy out Manny's contract, so there's a lot of money here. It's just kind of high stakes. I wouldn't say poker, but it's high stakes. Whatever it is, there's a lot of money involved. I'm kind of curious as to your theory about this. Either of you ever watched the show Intervention? It's about like people struggling with addiction and Okay, so it has the same beats, and the first segment is always the introduction of the person. Hey, this is Jimmy. Jimmy's a great guy, and everybody talks about how great he is until some tragedy hits, and then he gets hooked on drugs. And not to make light of addiction, but honest to God,
Yeah.
when I looked at Mario's career, it's like the intervention model. He was so good at FIU. I mean, they were so bad. They lost 36 straight at FIU before he came on board. He took them to back-to-back bowls. He had a falling out with the athletic department. You would know as a Florida guy that athletic department's a joke. So who knows if he just got tired of them being crappy, and he's not the most chipper guy in the world, so they probably fought all the time. But still, I think honestly, it's just like I see the PTSD is like when Saban happened, like when he went to work for Saban, and you see this with other coaches, like they think, all right, this is what you do. You grind people to death, and you be just a taskmaster and a dick. And I think a lot of people don't understand why it works. I think Kirby kind of sees the why behind the what. And I think a lot of people just say, yeah, I'm this could be the toughest guy around. And it doesn't always work. And when these Alabama guys fail, it fails miserably. I think there's some of that too, what happened here, because the guy I'm seeing at Miami is not, and that just would always have just stupid losses at Oregon, is not the guy that took FIU to back-to-back bowls. It's just not the same guy.
Yeah.
Totally different narrative.
Yeah.
I think Miami is, and just Mario's one of those things where, again, just like Circle we talked about, he gets the talent there. And I think when the preseason rankings happen, there's just too much deference to the roster and just not enough like, well, what's the sum of the parts here? And I saw it at USC all the time under Kiffin and Sark and Clay Helton. And when Mario, remember a few years ago, Oregon was like preseason number 3, about like 2019, I think, or maybe 2021. It always makes for just a fascinating narrative about, the battle between, the coaching versus the talent and what's going to happen here in terms of just, the final product. I asked ChatGPT, and I asked it in a different way, but I kind of am still paraphrasing its answer. I said, what's going on here? Why are things going so wrong here so far? And ChatGPT said, well, Mario thinks that misery loves company is a great and team building philosophy. So I don't know.
Yeah.
They added a football analyst module to it. Yeah.
That's funny. I do wonder, though. I mean, to your point, though, Mark, I think it's interesting, right? Like Miami put a ton of money into the program last year, right? And their assistant salary pool was like, what, 8.1 or 2 million. It was right behind Clemson, I think, for the highest assistant salary pool. This guy just went out and he hired who? Charlie Strong, right? He hires Kevin Steele. He has all these guys that have accomplished things, right? Yep. But their greatest days are really behind them for the most part. And they're not hungry. And what you talked about, and Gaddis is the same way. It's like these guys, like Mario's a grinder, and he wants to work with dudes that are grinders. Those guys, what's their motivation? They've already accomplished everything they need to accomplish. They didn't want to grind. And I think there was just like culturally speaking, and I think a guy like Mario's got to be about culture first, because that's just a huge part of who he is. Horrible fits, I think, for what he wants to do. And I think he just fell into some money, and he spent the money and didn't really assess. Because, to be honest, Lance Guidry, what, half the cost at least? Yeah. Lance Guidry's got a history of DUIs and other things that have kind of held him down in his career. But who else hired Lance Guidry before Mario Cristobal? Willie Fritz at Tulane. Like, that's where he was at before he was at Marshall. He was only there for a minute, like a week. And then he came over to Miami. But Willie Fritz is another one. He's a great, developer and, a program developer, a great assessor of coaches. And so I think that's another notch in the Lance Guidry belt. And Lance Guidry's a different hire, and Shannon Dawson's a different hire than Josh Gaddis and Kevin Steele. So hopefully it's a better fit. I'm skeptical offensively more than defensively. I think he's got something, and I think he'll figure out how to use his talent better. But we'll see. I think it's a fascinating team, and I think like they're on the precipice of either they're going to be able to become relevant again, or like it's just time has passed them by, and they're not going to be able to get back to the top. I think this is it.
Well,
This is a crossroads moment for them.
yeah, I've got bad news for you. That as a USC, I can tell you, even if you're not relevant, you'll still be in the news and be talked about. But it's not going to be awesome.
Yeah.
I've been through
Yeah.
a lot of that